Serious, what are some women's issues that are overlooked? Hysterectomies. I'm 24 and have reoccurring fibroid tumors and have since I was a teenager. It's not typical for someone my age to have multiple and large fibroids. My largest one was 11 centimeters. They are painful and I'm about to have my second surgery to remove them. I don't want to keep doing this over and over and would like to have a hysterectomy. Yet my surgeon refuses because I'm young and might want children. If I get pregnant, I have a high risk of miscarriage. It will eat me alive if that happens to me. I'm finally getting my fallopian tubes removed in a couple weeks. I prepped by looking at every angle they might say no and even the laws in my area concerning it. I wonder if it helps to bring up that you'll sign anything absolving them of blame in that very hypothetical case, or threatening to report them to the board for refusing to treat your serious medical condition. Good luck. That sometimes you really do need that hysterectomy the doctors are refusing to give you because they want to make sure you don't want to have more children. Same goes for getting a tubal done. In Mexico in 1990, my aunt was told that if she had any more children, she'd likely die. She had complications on kid 6. She had to go to Mexico City to get permission from the bishop to get her tubes tied. Some unmarried male stranger got to choose whether my aunt would have a potentially life-saving surgery. The lack of actual education about your own body. Like I didn't even know I had 3 holes until I was 16, and I learned it from an episode of Big Mouth. I remember reading about the 3 holes once and the commenting with a friend girl too at school and her calling me dumb for believing such nonsense. Telling everyone I thought we had 3 holes and ganging up with other girls, so I ended up being the joke for a good long while. Fast forward many years, me in my mid-30s watching Big Mouth and feeling vindicated by the ducking public service that TV series is doing for teens. Seriously, my partner was confused at my reaction. I'm glad I wasn't the only one. LOL. Cervical cancer caused by HPV. I don't know about other women on here, but I never received an explanation of what a pap smear does tests for or why it's so important to get done at the proper intervals. I had 3 abnormal paps in a row and my OB-GYN didn't bat an eye. I just got a new doctor and she insisted on doing a punch biopsy colposcopy, and it turns out I have HSIL, which has a pretty high likelihood of further mutating into full-blown cervical cancer. I'm now facing a cold knife carnizational leap procedure because my OB-GYN didn't care enough to look into why my pap smears were abnormal. Oral contraceptive birth control pills can cause depression and very often do. PMS and PMDD aren't taken seriously enough. The depression and anxiety of PMDD are debilitating. Edit, genuinely a little heartbroken at how much this blew up overnight. I'm so sorry, but not surprised that so many of you deal with these issues. If you have PMDD, please join us at our PMDD, if only to have a sounding board for when you're feeling bad and wondering if you're crazy. You're not alone. Oral contraceptive birth control pills can cause depression and very often do. I really wish this were discussed more. I struggled with depression and anxiety for years throughout my early 20s. I stopped taking birth control and it just vanished. I almost couldn't believe the difference it made. Even my colleagues noticed how much my demeanor had improved. A lot of my friends have stopped taking it too with similar experiences. None of us feel the need to go back. Additionally, my friend struggled with migraines for years and no doctor ever suggested that because could be the cause, but she hasn't had one since she stopped taking them years ago. I don't know why nobody ever suggested it. I know the pill has been incredibly useful for women to have better control over their bodies and can be very helpful to some. I just wish they had talked through it more when prescribing. The only thing I was worried about was that I'd gain weight on them. In my country it's afterbirth care for mothers. Mental health system is ducked. Women are told the pain they are feeling is normal only to find out they need a stoma bag a month down the track. Some women have died after not being checked over properly before leaving the hospital. Edit, I don't even live in a third world country either. People are wanting to move here because of how we've handled COVID. Medical conditions going untreated because they're all dismissed as anxiety, the new hysteria, or related to hormones. A neurologist tried to tell me unexplained episodes of body numbness couldn't possibly be the migraines the emergency room doctor suspected and treated effectively, but must be anxiety. I said that would be very unusual given that I had no anxiety before or during these episodes. Apparently I can be not anxious and magically cause a physical symptom with the magical power of anxiety, even when I have no anxiety. I've also been told anxiety caused my food allergies. Yes. I had a similar experience. Was having unusual symptoms that were debilitating. Doctors chalked it up to migraines and anxiety. I recall being taken to the emergency room and overheard a patient next to me describing very similar symptoms, and he was sent for a stat MRI. As for me, I was sent home after being given drugs for migraine through and forth. A family member who was with me even asked about an MRI or CORD scan and was immediately dismissed. Cut to 2 years later, I was finally sent for an MRI after some pleading and tears, and wouldn't you know it, was rushed in for emergency surgery to remove a brain tumor. I wish I had known how to advocate for myself. 4 years I suffered, and it kept getting worse, to the point I no longer wanted to live. Luckily surgery and treatment was successful, but not without leaving behind permanent brain damage and significantly altering the trajectory of my life. Yeah. A lot of women have migraines, but it's also possible someone can have migraines and a brain tumor. How bad some of the negative effects hormonal birth control can be. I was losing my mind, but my doctor brushed it off saying I was just stressed. Got off it, and instantly felt so much better. I ducking hate hormonal birth control. I've tried almost every type and they all magically mess me up in different ways. It seems to either makes me so nauseated and wrecks my GI system, it completely kills my sex drive, or it makes me suicidal. I really want my tubes tied, but I'm super scared of surgery. I wish there were more non-hormonal options or more options for men. Plus every time I complained about the side effects it was, oh are you sure it's the because most people handle it just fine. Please shut up. Same. I have tried almost every type of hormonal birth control pill and have had awful side effects on each. And I don't care what anyone says about generics being the same as the name brand. The side effects were even worse, and each generic of the same brand pill even had different side effects. I can't wait to get health insurance again so I can try the copper IUD. Periods will be heck, but I'd rather have that than duck up my hormones. Every doctor dismissed my concerns because birth control doesn't do that, or it's all in your head. PCOS. 10% of women have this, including me, which leads to diabetes, infertility, and many other problems. The biggest issue with PCOS for me, aside from previously being an ovulatory, was that I went 29 years undiagnosed because I'm nearly 5'9" and 110 pounds. I didn't fit the type for so many options. The education gap in phenotypes of the syndrome is unreal, and it's because education in female-only issues isn't a priority. The lack of research is incredibly depressing. What's Sally's? It took until I scrolled 3/4 of the way down the page to find something that isn't health related. Then there was one that wasn't health related. Then it was all health related again. We really have a problem here. I was just about to comment the same thing. After having my heart issues dismissed as just anxiety by several doctors for several years, and nothing being done about my irregular periods, they said I would grow out of it. But I'm almost at my mid-20s. I realized women's health is a joke. I really wanted to become a doctor ever since I was young. But after having my very real concerns dismissed repeatedly and hearing about everyone else's experiences, it really makes me question if it's worth. Getting off of any form of birth control is hard. This past week I had my normal yearly OBG checkup. I mentioned I wanted my IUD out. My normal doctor was out of the office, so I had to see someone else. She refused to take my IUD out because I wasn't married, and she insisted that my fiance wouldn't want the chance of us getting pregnant. Wanting to get your tubes tied, but you have to get your partner's permission. You need to have kids first. Also the general lack of sex ed. Women's thinking they pee out of their vagina, or given the wrong information on for to keep things clean down there. or the correct ways on how to prevent pregnancy, if that's what you want to do. Medical issues. It took me 3 emergency room visits and a walk-in doctor to diagnose a raging infection in my abdomen. I was told it's all in my head. By the time it got diagnosed, my bowel had almost perforated. I could have died if I was less tenacious. When I was a kid 12ish, I was very sick. My pediatrician was on maternity leave, so a male doctor was filling in for her. My mom kept taking me to the doctor, and he kept saying I was trying to skip school, and that my mom should stop falling for my act. To be fair, I did feign illness to skip school a lot as a kid, but this time I was genuinely terribly sick. I could barely hold my own head up. I kept getting worse. Doctor kept flip-flopping between saying it was a cold and saying I was faking. I felt so sick I couldn't even get off the couch. I wasn't eating, barely drinking. Then one night my mom woke up with a bad feeling in her gut, found me asleep on the couch, unresponsive, barely breathing. She took me to the emergency room, where they said I'd had severe pneumonia for several weeks, and it went untreated because the doctor didn't believe me or my mom. The doctors at the hospital told my mom I probably would have died that night if she didn't wake up to check on me when she did. My lungs are permanently damaged and function at less than half capacity now. Almost 15 years later, I cannot laugh for more than a minute without my lungs filling with fluid, and you can forget about running or doing any moderate exercise. I also had to be put on such strong medications that they destroyed my stomach lining and gave me acid reflux that lasted several years. When I was around 5, I had a problem with just dropping to the ground randomly or completely zoning out for no reason. Doctor kept telling my gran I was fine, that I was just clumsy, or I was playing around. Then it happened in the living room and I bashed my head on the coffee table. 1 MRI and a round of blood tests later, and they found out I had a non-functioning thyroid and was suffering from petit mal seizures as well as a bunch of other little issues that had also been passed off as she's just a goofy kid. They started me on the proper meds, and over time it's gotten rid of pretty much all of the issues I had back then. I'm so sorry you have to deal with permanent damage because of a dumbass who couldn't do his job. Postpartum depression. It's so much more common than people think, but many mothers feel too guilty to reach out for help because they think everything is supposed to be amazing after getting the baby. Perinatal mental health disorders in general. I think people think it's only PPD, but there are a whole host of issues beyond just that. There's prenatal postpartum anxiety, prenatal postpartum OCD, and more. The OCD one is so sad in particular because it often comes with really disturbing intrusive thoughts, frequently involving harming or sexually abusing your own infant. People are so ashamed. They don't ask for help. Bottom line, if you feel off, ask for help, and don't stop asking for help until you get it. Sadly, some providers won't take patients seriously, so you must really advocate for yourself. I had PPA anxiety and PPOCD with my older daughter. I didn't know either were a thing until my husband convinced me to see someone for help, and I was diagnosed. By that point I hadn't driven my car in 8 months because I was convinced my daughter's car seat would fly out of the car, and I slept on the floor by her crib because I had convinced myself she would catch fire during the night. I once threw up in the car because we drove past a carnival and I couldn't stop the intrusive thoughts that I would drop her off a Ferris wheel. Even though we had no intention of even stopping, these thoughts and paranoia felt so real. Even though I knew how ridiculous they were, I was too embarrassed to talk about them to anyone but my husband. And thank goodness he convinced me to find someone who prescribed me the right meds and gave me back the enjoyment of having a baby. In my country, Bangladesh, women are blamed for everything wrong that happens. For example, if a girl marries a guy and after years the guy dies of a disease or something, people will say the girl ate the guy, meaning anyone who marries the girl will die. Another example is that when women are sexually assaulted, people say stuff like, why did the girl go in front of guys? Why did the girls go out at night? Why did the girl wear short dresses in front of guys? Stop, this is what Asian girls need to go through. I hope one day girl blaming will come to an end. Even if you wear the burqa, if you get raped in your burqa they will tell you that the burqa you are wearing is not proper. They had designs or gems in them which tempted the rapist. Remember the Feeney rape case, where a girl got burned to death by her classmates for reporting the sexual abuse of their principal. They marched in support for the principal, and people in the internet pointed out the victim was not wearing a proper burqa. Same thing for the Camilla Cantonment rape case. Victim gets raped and killed. People blamed her, even though she was wearing a hijab. Their argument was the hijab she was wearing was not a proper one, but a fashionable one which tempted the rapists. Our country is a hellhole. I'm a dude, and this will probably get buried, but I hate the fact that when I'm doing something with my longtime GF like buying a new car, renting a new apartment, taking a loan etc., that people ignore my GF and assume she is just not important. They just look at me and talk only to me. I have to make an effort to include her in something she should be in from the start. I feel so bad for her and try to amend it as much as I can, but there is not much you can do. We were at the car dealers the other day looking at the car, and the dealer kept ignoring her and her wishes. He was only looking at me and assumed she doesn't know what she is talking about. We just left. I have fun with these situations. I'm a tall guy with a deep voice and this happens all the time. I use one of the following tactics regularly and oh boy, it's fun. Start playing on my phone. Stay silent when asked a question. Ask my wife what she thinks. Tell the dude talking my wife is the expert and she's there to help my dumbass. Walk away mid conversation. Yawn and roll my eyes. Adjust my body orientation so we are both facing my wife. Ask increasingly stupid and annoying questions. We were interviewing contractors recently for a renovation, and one of them was terrible. Absolutely refused to acknowledge my wife. I laid down on the floor and pretended to sleep, clearly pretending, and even then he wouldn't acknowledge her. He left a few minutes into my nap. Needless to say, he didn't get the job. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.